morning, everyone. Welcome to Herald Now. I'm Ryan Bridge. It's Thursday, the 12th of June. Coming up on the show this morning, more violence in Los Angeles, new protests springing up in New York and Chicago, the governor of Texas calling in the National Guard, and the Trump administration keeps talking tough. We're live to the United States. Wool is back in business, baby. Fed Farmers gives its take on the state of the rural economy and this big win for the Save Our Sheep campaign. It's to do with state houses. The latest milestone in the Christchurch rebuild. We're inside the new $500 million indoor sports centre. Why does Christchurch get everything? You got a new stadium, now you want a sports centre. What's next? We have immigration numbers coming your way, another slowdown, and political editor Thomas Coughlin is with us from Parliament. Right now, here's Neva with news.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
New Zealand's export revenue from food and fibres is forecast to surpass $60 billion for the first time. Agriculture and Forestry Minister Todd McClay says strong global demand and healthy prices across key markets are positioning us for record growth. The latest Situation and Outlook for Primary Industries report projects export earnings of $59.9 billion with a year ending later this month. That's $3 billion higher than expected in December. And McClay says with this momentum, it's on track to reach $65.7 billion by 2029. Heavy hitters include dairy exports lifting 16% to a record $27 billion and horticulture rising 19% to $8.5 billion. Meanwhile, Beef and Lamb New Zealand is concerned whether the settings around farm to forest conversions go far enough. Todd McClay has introduced legislation to stop large-scale conversions. Research shows nearly 39,000 hectares of whole sheep and beef farms have been sold since the last report in September. Beef and Lamb New Zealand chair Kate Ackland says they're not anti-forestry, they just support trees in steep, less productive country. A New York jury has found Harvey Weinstein guilty on a sex crimes charge in a retrial. It comes after an appeals court last year overturned the former movie mogul's 2020 conviction. Weinstein, once one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, was accused by prosecutors of raping an aspiring actress and assaulting two other women. The 73-year-old pleaded not guilty and has denied assaulting anyone or having non-consensual sex. The jury has found Weinstein guilty on one of the three counts he faced, not guilty on a second count, and did not reach a verdict on the third count. Facial recognition technology could soon be rolled out by some of the country's largest retailers. Woolworths, The Warehouse, Briscoes, Rebel Sport, Bunnings, Mitre 10, Farmers, Michael Hill, Spark and 1NZ are all supporting the use of the tech. It follows a successful trial by Foodstuffs in some New World and Pack and Save stores. Retail NZ Chief Executive Carolyn Young says retailers are working on ways to include the tech as part of their existing security measures.
Really focusing on how do we keep our staff safe, because we've seen this increasing level of violent and aggressive behaviour towards staff.
Co-founder of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, has died aged 82. Wilson co-founded the boy band in 1961 with his brothers Dennis and Carl, their cousin Mike Love and friend Al Jardine. He was the last surviving brother and visionary leader and songwriter of hits like Surfin' USA and Good Vibrations.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
South Africa are 43 for 4 at stumps, responding to Australia's 212 after the opening day of cricket's World Test Championship final at Lords. Lulu Sun and American doubles tennis partner Ann Lee have lost their first match at the WTA's latest grass court event in the Netherlands in straight sets. Female tennis players wanting to freeze eggs or embryos to start a family at a later date will now have their ranking protected by the WTA Tour. Taranaki have successfully defended the Ranfurly Shield for the first time in 2025 with a 78-7 win over King Country in New Plymouth.
I've just been reminded after mentioning why is Christchurch getting so much new stuff, including a stadium and including an indoor sports centre. There was the earthquake, wasn't there? Right, just gone 3 minutes after 7 and you're watching Herald Now. I've been thinking this Field Days week about how much the dial has shifted on farming and emissions. Yes, I have been. Thank you very much. We had Chris Hipkins on this program Tuesday admit they essentially don't currently have a policy on putting agriculture into the emissions trading scheme. It was a signature policy platform under Ardern. We had to do it, they told us. It was immoral not to do it, they said. Farmers had to pay a higher price. Labor's now open to completely ditching that altogether and softening its tone. This is happening for two reasons. One, people are alive to the fact that without a strong agricultural export economy, our regions would feel a lot more like our main centres right now, which is to say economically depressed and just limping along. Actually, selling a bunch of stuff that we already know how to do well is exactly what a small trading nation like ours should be doing. And number two, the government has successfully changed the narrative on emissions, basically through repetition. They say our farmers are the most efficient in the world. The world is demanding meat and dairy. If we cut back, somebody else meets the global demand with, you guessed it, higher emitting meat and dairy products. So for reasons of basic economics and political reality, the dial has shifted on farming and emissions. And Labor might be late to the party, but at least they're listening.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. The instability over central New Zealand remains today, with a low lying just off the west coast of the South Island and a nor'west flow over the north. So the risk remains for thunderstorms today for some, but not for the lower south though. There will be the chance of showers for Southland and showers clear this morning for Queenstown and occasional rain across the day for Dunedin. Mostly cloudy with showers for the upper half of the south. Christchurch and Ashburton, you can expect more rain than those in the west, with strong southeasterlies for South Canterbury. Taranaki, you do have conditions right for thunderstorms again today, this morning, then again tonight, and with strong nor'westerlies. Any showers will be in the morning here, becoming few and far between in the afternoon. Winds will be from the north or nor'west, could be strong this afternoon for a little bit around Gisborne. And more showers for the upper north today, with possible heavy falls and thunderstorms with hail for Auckland, west of the city this morning, easing for a time this afternoon and early this evening.
You're watching Herald Now. It's just gone 6 minutes after 7. For days, we've been told about an authoritarian and undemocratic overreach by President Trump over the LA riots. As protests spread this morning across the country and more National Guards are sent to the front lines, these social media videos from the past few days tell a different story. Now, we'll hear from Caroline Nevitt, who's Donald Trump's spokesperson at the White House, in just a second. But right now, reporter Hugh Griffith from AFP is in Los Angeles and with me this morning. Hugh, thank you for being here. Tell me, what's the situation nationally now? Are we seeing protests start to spread?
Yeah, we're seeing protests popping up in different cities now in the United States. There were protests last night in New York and in Chicago, and also in San Antonio in Texas. We've got several protests expected today in cities like Las Vegas, in Seattle, again in New York as well. So we'd be expected to see several more events later on during the day.
Is it getting worse, or is there a sign that you know, the protesters are worn out and are dispersing?
Well, here in Los Angeles, where we have a big team on the ground, I can tell you that the protests are very, very localized. Los Angeles is an enormous city with many, many millions of people. It's 500 square miles. The protests have been taking place in the downtown area, which is 1 square mile. It's several city blocks, that's all. And the protests have been limited very much to a small number of places. The trouble that we've seen over the last few days, particularly the pictures that you were showing in the lead up to this, many of these stem from Sunday. There were isolated acts of eye-catching violence, the cars being set fire to, and the rocks being thrown at the police cars. Those all happened on Sunday. The bulk of the trouble that we've seen has been after dark. It's been small groups of people. It hasn't been the several thousand people who've gathered for peaceful protests during the day.
So that feeds into this idea that the White House is provoking and maybe inflaming some of this. Depending on where you sit on the political spectrum, I suppose, would determine what your view on that is, Hugh.
Yeah, most of the people that we've been speaking to in Los Angeles feel that the deployment of armed troops into the streets of Los Angeles is a huge overreaction. As I said, it's a very, very small part of the city that's affected. If I look outside my window, our office is in Hollywood, it looks completely normal outside. As I drive through the city, it's completely normal. Los Angeles has an incredibly big and well-practiced police force that's very good at dealing with civil unrest. It also has the ability to call on other police forces in the region. And the mayor and the police chief have both insisted that they have the capacity to deal with any civil unrest that's happened.
All right, Hugh, really appreciate your time this morning. That's Hugh Griffith, who's the AFP reporter for us in Los Angeles this morning. Let's go now to Caroline Levitt at the White House. This is Donald Trump's press spokesperson, had this to say a short time ago.
What we have seen transpire in Los Angeles, California in recent days is shameful. Left-wing radicals waving foreign flags viciously attacked ICE and Border Patrol agents as well as Los Angeles police officers. These criminals injured police, threw rocks at police cars and officers, burned vehicles, shut down freeways, and lobbed Molotov cocktails. These attacks were aimed not just at law enforcement, but at American culture and society itself. Rioters burned American flags, chanted "Death to ICE," and spray-painted anti-American slogans on buildings. But President Trump will never allow mob rule to prevail in America.
Just gone 11 after 7. You're watching Herald Now. That was Caroline Levitt at the White House just in the last couple of hours. Back home now, wool is winning again. Minister Nicola Willis announcing this morning that Kāinga Ora will be returning wool carpets to all state homes. New ones, that is. Joining me now, Wayne Langford from Fed Farmers. He's at Field Days. Wayno, come in. Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, morning, Ryan. Going well. It's been a bit of a short night, but I've got a smile on my face, so good start.
Great news. You must be pleased about Kāinga Ora because there's been a bit of a battle going on behind the scenes about this, right?
Yeah, there has, and it's fantastic to see the support for our sheep farmers and our wool industry. It is the backbone of what New Zealand was built on, and we're having one last dig at getting it going again. And I think we're going to be successful if we can support it like what they are at the moment.
Do you will it change the dial? I mean, is it enough to change the dial for the industry, or is it just another step in the road?
It's a big step in the road, which is great, and it's showing the support again to the sheep farmers. It's also building up the industry again within New Zealand, which is critically important. Once we lose that critical mass of our wool sector, we might never get it back. So this is saying, hey, we don't want to lose that. We want to keep it. Wool's a fantastic product. It is actually the best product, most carbon efficient. I don't know how much more you want me to sell it, but it's fantastic, and the government are getting behind it.
Clearly, they've got the sales pitch, Wayne. You're at Field Days. We'll get to the vibe there in a second, but some other new numbers out this morning. This is new numbers for our food and fibre exports, on track to break new records. Of course, we've already been hitting them over the last few months, but dairy export revenue up 16% to 27 billion, meat and wool up 8% to 12.3 billion, horticulture up 19% to 8.5 billion. The total due to hit 60 billion according to projections. This is the year ending June. Do you think, and clearly the government, you feel like the government is on side with farmers at the moment. Do you think that is actually having a material impact on the results that we're seeing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, ultimately, the overseas markets determine how our products go. But removing some of the red tape and the problems that we've been having on the farm over the last few years, and making it easier for farmers to produce, getting those small efficiencies up and going. So if I just give an example around immigration, for example, and being able to get staff on farm, to be able to get our hay and our silage made on time. If you're a day late making your silage, it could cost you 30 to 40% of the value of that silage, or the feed value of that silage. So that's a significant production drop, as you can imagine. So it's doing small things like being able to get staff and contractors on the farm that can make a huge difference. So sometimes it feels like a government announcement doesn't make a big difference, and you say, hey, what difference will that make? Well, something as small as that can make a bigger difference as that, and it all adds to this overall profitability.
And the vibe too. Speaking of which, how is it at field days? I mean, you said it sounded like maybe you'd had a late night last night, Wayne.
Yes, a great night actually. We're a big night supporting the Rural Support Trust. They had a big dinner here last night, raising I think $400,000, which is fantastic. But also just the vibe in general around field days. There's definitely a few more smiles, a bit more of a positive vibe, and hopefully a few more people opening up their wallets to support those that are here.
Absolutely, Wayne. Appreciate you coming on the show as always. That's Wayne Langford, President of Federated Farmers, with us live from Field Days this morning. Don't forget to get in touch. Ryan@nzherald.co.nz is the email address. Maybe do you think, if you're from rural New Zealand, you couldn't make it to Field Days at Mystery Creek this year, your thoughts on what you think the rest of the country thinks of you, and do you think that vibe is changing, is shifting? Ryan@nzherald.co.nz. We'll be back at Field Days after 8 this morning with Business Desk reporter Riley Kennedy. Coming up next, though, a damning report into Oranga Tamariki. Why can this problem not be fixed? The Children's Monitor, Aaron Jones, is next.
Here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference. But 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost center reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
Welcome back. It is 18 minutes after 7 o'clock. We've been talking about wool this morning. I just realised I haven't shaved my neck this morning. Apologies. I've only just noticed that just now. Right, a new report has found that Māori children in the Oranga Tamariki system are being let down. Aaron Jones is the Independent Children's Monitor, done the report and with us this morning. Aaron, good morning.
Yeah, kia ora, Ryan.
Well, it's not a good morning, is it? Because every time we hear reports like this, it's not a good morning. So 92% of kids who are in trouble with youth justice, which this will surprise no one, but had a previous care and protection concern raised about them. In other words, this is saying, if you had a bad childhood, you're more likely to end up in trouble with the law.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, what strikes me with that statistic is there's the opportunity, right? So how can the system do better? And when I say the system, I'm talking about oranga tamariki, I'm talking about health, I'm talking about education, to support these kids when they first come to the attention, so they can go on and have good lives. And one of the striking things with this report is the aspirations of young Māori that are involved in the system are really no different from those kids that aren't. And the question is, how can we support them so they can go and give life to those aspirations?
Totally. So what does this mean? We're excited about social investment. This is Nicola Willis's baby. This is what Bill English tried to fight for. This is early intervention for exactly the children that you're talking about.
Well, that's exactly it, Ryan. If we can intervene early and invest in those services and supports, but you've got to make sure that you're putting the right supports in place for them. And so this report talks about some of those initiatives where Oranga Tamariki are partnering with iwi Māori providers and others to provide the right services. And they're not about addressing symptoms, they're about addressing the underlying causes. They're working with not just the young person, but also with their whānau.
Yeah,
because that's where they live.
Yes,
and you've got to work with the whole family.
As your report says, Aaron, you can't actually say definitively what impact that is having. Those programs are having. I mean, even though they you have one or two good examples, you can't say anything's actually definitively working and turning the tide.
It's a real challenge because when you're working in the social area, there are so many impacts on a young person's life, and to be able to point to a particular action or a particular thing can be challenging because actually it can just be having one person in their life.
How will we even know?
To.
How will we even know if what we're doing is even going to work?
Actually, I think it's pretty simple, Ryan. If you go out and see some of these initiatives, you see them in action, you talk to the families like we do, you talk to the children, you can see it. And, there's an example in there about, I mentioned it yesterday, a young person, they stole from a business, they're now working there. So they've gone through a restorative process, had fronted up to what they've done, and now they're working. And so that's the sign of success.
Yeah, totally. But if you're talking about one example, in order to spend tens, hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to turn this tide around, we need a higher evidential threshold, don't we?
Yeah, and the Social Investment Agency will be looking at that. There are new ways of trying to measure the success of some of these initiatives. But look, the alternative, Ryan, is that you just build more ambulances at the bottom of the cliff. And that's not good for these young Māori. That's not good for communities either. And it's not good for their families. So that's the choice that has to be made.
Aaron, appreciate you coming on the program this morning and for your report as well. That's Aaron Jones, Independent Children's Monitor, live from Wellington, 21 after 7 now. 3 years on from the End of Life Choice Act, and it's all not going well, according to a new report out this morning. Key findings claim unequal access to palliative care and poor guardrails commissioning patient autonomy. Here to explain exactly what that means is Maxim Institute Research Manager Marianne Spurdle, who is with me in studio. Marianne, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So 3 years in, and I've had a read of your report. You're not happy about a couple of aspects and recommendations for change that have been made by the Ministry of Health. Do you just want to outline what your main problem is with this?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest concern was raised right before the Ministry of Health's own report came out, which was last November. The Herald actually broke the story. 2 of the original review committee members, so these are the people who take the reports from the deaths, make sure that all of these safeguards that are there are actually being observed and that there's nothing concerning. And what they found was that they wouldn't know if wrongdoing was happening because there was missing information, conflicting information. When they took this to the Ministry of Health, they were told if there's missing information, just assume nothing's wrong.
They said don't worry about it,
Yeah,
right?
Don't worry about it. They said, oh, it's computer glitches.
Why is this important? Tell people why this is important.
Well, because we have legalized killing people actively. And the idea is this is a choice. It's fair if somebody wants to die and they're suffering and they've got a 6-month prognosis. If any of those things isn't true, if they don't actually want it, then we are killing people. So,
yes, but is anyone suggesting that anyone has died who didn't want to?
Well, yeah, this is the thing.
The answer is no, right? The answer is no.
No, the answer is it looks like they have. What the review committee found was they had at least one person who died who didn't speak English, had no interpreter, and was suspected of having dementia. And they couldn't see evidence that this person actually wanted to die because it looked like they didn't have the means to communicate that.
And there was no family involved whatsoever?
Well, this is the thing. They wanted to find out more information and they couldn't. So one didn't return, one didn't have her contract renewed, and after the review committee stopped meeting for months because they didn't have a full committee, the Herald actually ran the story of their concerns. They were alarmed by what they saw, and the ministry, in its report, said this is largely operating well.
This is it. So, okay, there's an issue with record keeping.
Yes.
To put it mildly.
The people who see the records think so, yeah.
Okay, all right. The people who see the records say there's a issue with record keeping. So let's fix up that issue and then continue. I mean, what is your, do you have a moral objection to this generally?
Well, the question is it fair to give people the options we're giving them? Do they have the information they need? And do they
But that implies, I mean, we are all adults.
Yes.
I mean, you know, we can do our own research and it's our lives. Why don't we have the freedom to choose how we die?
Palliative care offers?
Yes,
Yeah.
my auntie was sadly treated with palliative care last year, and I know it can be difficult to access.
Yes. So it's like a game of would you rather. Would you rather kill yourself or would you rather die on an emergency ward? Some people don't have access to palliative care. So people who do, they have the option, they have the choice to have somebody counsel them and their family.
I get
they
it,
have
but
the choice to
if we
have
don't magic up
expert pain relief.
If we don't magic up, you know, a doubling of palliative care availability and access tomorrow, then why shouldn't people have that choice?
Well, two points there. The first is, should people have the choice of euthanasia if they don't have the choice of palliative care? Is that fair? And the second is, for every dollar that the government funds hospices, they get $1.59 in services.
I would ask you, is it fair to not offer, if somebody doesn't have the access to palliative care, is it fair not to offer the option of assisted dying? What's the alternative? They suffer?
If they don't have access to palliative care, it's not fair. With or without
so they
euthanasia,
suffer?
It's less fair with, well, this is the thing. We don't know that people aren't being killed who don't want to be. That's suffering.
You have one case.
Well, no, this is the thing. They don't know how many there are because they're reporting this.
Okay, so back to the records.
Now, this is, you know, you look at countries like Belgium, which have liberal euthanasia laws. What they've done in the legislation is require access to palliative care and require that anybody who applies has a referral to a palliative care team. Now, that sounds more fair, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, potentially it does. I mean, if the Belgians are doing it, it must be good. We have to leave it there. Excuse me, Marianne. Thank you very much for coming on the program. That's Marianne Spurtle, the Maxim Institute research manager, who was behind the report we've been discussing this morning. It's just gone 25 minutes after 7. Beach Boys founder, lead singer and songwriter Brian Wilson has died. Last year, it was revealed that Wilson was suffering from dementia. Wilson and the Beach Boys are widely regarded as one of the greatest American rock bands, with hits like Wouldn't It Be Nice, California Girls and God Only Knows. Very sad news indeed. He was 82 years old, apparently terribly abused when he was younger, in his younger years, and wanted to bring nothing but joy to the world. And boy, did he do that with his music. 27 after 7 now. New Zealand's latest migration stats are out. In the year to April 2025, we as a country gained just 21,300 people. So who did we lose and who did we gain? Distinguished Professor Emeritus Paul Spoonley is back in the studio with me this morning. Good to see you again, Paul.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning. So a continuation of this trend, people basically buggering off and not wanting to come here.
Yes. The good news story, there is a good news story, and that is that there are more New Zealanders returning, but everything else is either up or down in the wrong direction. So the arrivals are down a third, the departures are up a third. So we're just simply either not getting people or they're not staying.
Does this reach a point where we're net zero?
Yes, it could be. Yes, it could be. So it looks as though it's beginning to plateau out, but certainly in terms of what's been happening over the last year, it's all down, and it certainly could reach net zero.
When might that happen, do you reckon?
On current figures, probably early next year. But I don't anticipate it will. I think we'll see it plateau, and hopefully at some point we'll see it rise again.
Is it a bad thing if it keeps
No,
falling?
no, because both as a country and particularly Auckland as a city, net migration has really produced very high annual population growth. And as you know, and I know, here in Auckland, we are struggling to keep up with that population growth in terms of services and infrastructure. So having a little bit of a pause is not a bad thing at all.
Interesting, we had that parent boost immigration announcement from the government earlier this week on Sunday, I think it was, where the parents of migrants will be able to come here, but they'll be on a special visa, pay for their own healthcare, etc. But they still will need healthcare. I mean, do you think that we've thought through the implications of potentially 10,000 applicants a year from a policy like that on even just housing, other things?
Yeah, I'm in favour of it because I don't think we should treat migrants as individuals. I think they come as family units. But we do need to ensure that the costs, particularly of older parents coming to New Zealand, are not met by the New Zealand taxpayer.
Yeah.
So it's only you can come in and out of the country for 5 years. So it's not a permanent residence. It is, in fact, a sort of elongated temporary residence.
Great to see you as always, Paul.
Thank you, Ryan.
Come in any time, we appreciate it. Distinguished Professor Emeritus Paul Spoonley, population expert, just gone 7:30. And you're watching Herald Now. Good to have your company. Here's your front page of the Herald this morning, by the way. Haven't shown you that yet. More homes to rise by the rail hubs. This is about the City Rail Link, because, by the way, in a year's time, just over a year's time, we think, we'll be riding on trains underground in New Zealand and through our largest city. And did you know that when the last government passed legislation, it meant that there would be a restriction on the height and growth of housing developments around some of the stations for the City Rail Link, and the government has moved in the last 24 hours to change that. We'll talk to Thomas Coughlin, who's our political editor, about all of this after 8 o'clock. If you have any thoughts for us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz, especially about assisted dying. You know, do you know anyone who has used this legislation? Ryan at nzherald.co.nz, and what was their experience like? We'd love to hear from you this morning. Right now, here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
New Zealand's export revenue from food and fibres is forecast to surpass $60 billion for the first time. Agriculture and Forestry Minister Todd McClay says strong global demand and healthy prices across key markets are positioning us for record growth. The latest Situation and Outlook for Primary Industries report projects export earnings of $59.9 billion with a year ending later this month. That's $3 billion higher than expected in December. And McClay says with this momentum, it's on track to reach $65.7 billion by 2029. Heavy hitters include dairy exports lifting 16% to a record $27 billion and horticulture rising 19% to $8.5 billion. Meanwhile, Beef and Lamb New Zealand is concerned whether the settings around farm to forest conversions go far enough. Todd McClay has introduced legislation to stop large-scale conversions. Research shows nearly 39,000 hectares of whole sheep and beef farms have been sold since the last report in September. Beef and Lamb New Zealand chair Kate Ackland says they're not anti-forestry, they just support trees in steep, less productive country. A New York jury has found Harvey Weinstein guilty on a sex crimes charge in a retrial. It comes after an appeals court last year overturned the former movie mogul's 2020 conviction. Weinstein, once one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, was accused by prosecutors of raping an aspiring actress and assaulting 2 other women. The 73-year-old pleaded not guilty and has denied assaulting anyone or having non-consensual sex. The jury has found Weinstein guilty on 1 of the 3 counts he faced, not guilty on a second count, and did not reach a verdict on the 3rd count. Facial recognition technology could soon be rolled out by some of the country's largest retailers. Woolworths, The Warehouse, Briscoes, Rebel Sport, Bunnings, Mitre 10, Farmers, Michael Hill, Spark and 1NZ are all supporting the use of the tech. It follows a successful trial by Foodstuffs in some New World and Pack and Save stores. Retail NZ Chief Executive Carolyn Young says retailers are working on ways to include the tech as part of their existing security measures.
really focusing on how do we keep our staff safe, because we've seen this increasing level of violent and aggressive behaviour towards staff.
Co-founder of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, has died aged 82. Wilson co-founded the boy band in 1961 with his brothers Dennis and Carl, their cousin Mike Love and friend Al Jardine. He was the last surviving brother and visionary leader and songwriter of hits like Surfin' USA and Good Vibrations.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
South Africa are 43 for 4 at stumps, responding to Australia's 212 after the opening day of cricket's World Test Championship final at Lords. Lulu Sun and American doubles tennis partner Ann Lee have lost their first match at the WTA's latest grass court event in the Netherlands in straight sets. Female tennis players wanting to freeze eggs or embryos to start a family at a later date will now have their ranking protected by the WTA Tour. Taranaki have successfully defended the Ranfurly Shield for the first time in 2025 with a 78-7 win over King Country in New Plymouth.
25 away from 8 now on Herald Now. Quick update for you on the Trump-China tariff war tit for tat. They've been talking in London, which is good, and Trump says they have the makings of a deal. So not quite a deal, but the makings of a deal. Of course, China needs US semiconductors, amongst other things, and the US needs China's rare earth minerals, so they have struck a deal to basically tick that issue off the list. And the new tariff rate, according to Donald Trump, will be 55%. And you think, hang on a minute, the current one is 30%. So the new deal makes it worse for China. But Trump is quick to point out that that includes your 10% tariff that we're all paying, your worldwide one, plus your 20% for fentanyl, because that's what Trump accuses China of shipping to them, and then a 25% pre-existing tariff that actually Trump brought in his first term, and then Biden kept. That equals 55%. So anyway, they reckon a deal's been done. 24, Garth is sitting here, looking pretty, as always. We'll get to him right after this for a 2 Degrees business update.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. The instability over central New Zealand remains today, with a low lying just off the west coast of the South Island and a nor'west flow over the north. So the risk remains for thunderstorms today for some, but at this stage just one heavy rain watch is in place for North Otago through till 5 o'clock this afternoon, with a moderate chance of upgrading to an orange warning. So occasional rain across the day for Dunedin, with the chance of showers for Southland. Showers will clear for you Queenstown this morning. Mostly cloudy with showers for the upper half of the south. Christchurch and Ashburton, you can expect more rain than those on the west coast, with strong sou'easterlies for South Canterbury. Taranaki, you do have conditions right for thunderstorms again today, this morning, then again tonight, with strong nor'westerlies. Any showers here will be this morning, but becoming few and far between this afternoon. Winds will be from the north or nor'west, could be strong this afternoon for those around Gisborne. And more showers today for the upper north, with possible heavy falls and thunderstorms with hail for Auckland, west of the city this morning, but easing for a time this afternoon and early tonight.
23 minutes away from 8 o'clock on Herald Now. Time to talk business with our partners 2 Degrees. NZ King Salmon says its customers don't mind the Trump tariffs, but its fish are not liking this weather. Business Desk has been tracking all this. Garth Bray is with me this morning. Garth, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
So we've just been talking about the tariffs and some guidance yesterday on salmon farming. Actually, it's doing all right.
Yeah, this was NZ King Salmon at the annual shareholders meeting. The chair was telling them, look, we're not seeing any change in demand through the year since that sort of 10% tariff kicked in. I guess if you can afford to buy lovely New Zealand salmon, maybe you don't mind a little bit extra. But they are a wee bit worried about marine heat waves. For the last 3 years, they've been trying to manage the pressure that's put on their fishing stocks. They had to, I think, reduced their forecast for next year for profit guidance for earnings because they were going to have to cut back from harvesting something with a 6 in front, 6,000 odd tonnes to somewhere more like about a 5,000. But they've got a solution, and that is this offshore fish farm that they've got approval for and raised $150, $200 million worth to build, sort of about 7 k's off into the Cook Strait, very cold water, and so that should possibly help. They think if it works, there's like $350 million worth of export earnings to be picked up that would lift their amounts massively.
I spoke to the chief executive about this a couple of months ago, and he said basically they think eventually they might just move everything further out.
Well, leave the sounds for the people that want to enjoy it and the pleasure boats and natural beauty and that.
And if the water's cooler and that's what you need, then it makes sense, doesn't it? Right, Tracksuit. Now this is a local sort of startup that does. Well, what exactly?
This is always the question. Brand tracking. Answering the hardest thing, I think you were asking before for farmers to phone in and people in rural, what do you think of farmers? Well, businesses struggle with what do people think of our brand? And normally the answer is go and spend $100,000, $200,000 at some place, Cantar, wherever, get your market research done. Takes ages. It's really for the rich, for the bigger companies. These guys have been up and running for 3 or 4 years, and they offer it at about 1/10 of the cost, a lot quicker, AI enabled, and it's going really well. They've got about 1,000 customers. They've got people like Disney, Zuru. They've got your Goodman Fielders. They're expanding left, right, and centre. I think Germany and Canada, as well as France, the UK, US, and they've raised $42 million in a Series B raise, which is probably one of the largest ones at that level. They're not quite profitable yet, but they are on the cusp. I mean, they say they want to build a business from New Zealand that's a multi-billion-dollar business.
That's cool.
I mean, the race is on between them and King Salmon, I'd say.
Yes, yeah, but they've got big. I mean, you said they were targeting smaller businesses, but those are big players that you're mentioning. Some of their customers.
Well,
right?
I guess it's attractive, right? If you can present not just a bunch of charts and graph, but here's a story. And I think like one of their backers essentially was saying, look, they give clear, continuous and cost-effective idea about how your brand's performing, and that's a big deal. So Blackbird are a venture capital funder of theirs. They're Australian-based. They were into Canva. I mean, Canva's just made a whole bunch of millionaires in Sydney when they finally sort of got there and went public. So this is one of those great little success stories, and it's not dependent on the weather so much. It's dependent on coming up with a smart answer.
Yeah, how cool. And also AI makes everything presumably a lot cheaper to operate, which is
seemingly, if you can crack it,
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Garth. Your brand's doing great. Garth Bray from Business Desk. We're talking business every day thanks to our partners 2 Degrees. Right, it is now 19 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Kath and Kim star Magda Szubanski is back on TV, being diagnosed, sadly, you might have seen this in the news in the last couple of days, being diagnosed with rare blood cancer. However, she has reprised her role as Sharon for a mental health ad, and it's entertaining Australians across the Tasman. Take a look.
How was your day, Mum? Good. Good. How was your day?
Yeah, good. How was your day?
Well, I met this nice lady today. She gave me this pack of cards. I said, what's this? She said it's a game. A very powerful game. Designed to play with your family. To facilitate a deeper conversation. To strengthen the bond through laughter and honesty. Because when the bonds of family are stronger, Australia is stronger.
Did you have to pay for it?
No.
Freebie?
Yeah, freebie.
Oh, score! Let's play!
There's Sharon, Magda Szubanski, who's 64 and battling a rare form of cancer. Treatment ongoing. She says it's rough, but she's feeling hopeful, which is good news. She's a funny lady. 18 away from 8 o'clock now. Christchurch's new Metro Sports facility is about to be, it's been likened perhaps unfairly to Barcelona's, to a famous place in Barcelona. I have no idea what it's called. While it lacks the grand aesthetics of the Spanish basilica, they both share one undeniable similarity. After many years, neither of them is finished. Herald Christchurch senior reporter Mike Thorpe will hopefully explain what I can't. Mike, good morning.
Let's start with the pronunciation of that, Ryan. It's the Sagrada Familia, which is obviously unfamiliar to you.
Very unfamiliar. What is it and why isn't it finished?
Well, let's not talk about the Basilica. Let's talk more about the Metro Sports Facility, or Parakiore, which is it was slated in 2012. You might remember the grand blueprint unveiling that occurred then. It was exciting. There was 17 anchor projects. This was one of them, and it was supposed to be finished in 2016 originally. Here we are in 2025, and we still aren't open. It's probably been one of those projects where everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, from the land that it's built on to the contractors that are doing it to the budget blowouts. It's just been one of those things. You have to sympathise with them, but at the same time, Christchurch has been waiting so long for this. And it, as I say, 15 years ago, it was unveiled. Get excited, Christchurch, because this is coming. Well, it still isn't here.
So what are we talking budget-wise? What's the blowout?
Well, originally 212 million was the price tag, and I recall in 2012 that seemed quite pricey. We're now up to 500 million, so 2.5 times. Yeah, I was saying to someone yesterday, if you were building a house and you wound up spending 2.5 times what you were originally intending, there would be massive panic stations, and the bank probably steps in. But here we are.
So hang on, that's so $500 million, and what are you getting for that? I saw a swimming pool, or a half-finished one at that, but what are you actually getting for that?
Look, it is impressive, I have to say. It's a massive swimming pool, right? And it's one that Christchurch hasn't had probably since 1974 Commonwealth Games, anything of this sort of significance. And it's obviously a whole lot better than what QE2 was. So a massive swimming complex, a massive recreational swimming complex, which is totally different to what you're seeing on the screen now. It's its own room.
Is this
Plus,
are these old pictures?
Nine courts for netball and basketball. It's an enormous community sports complex.
So the pictures we were just looking at, they're not of the new place, just to clarify, Mike?
No, that is the new place. But what you saw there was from the diving board, which is 10 metres up, and that's looking back at this Olympic-sized swimming pool. Beyond that is a whole recreational area as well, with 5 hydro slides, its own pools, a manu pool, which of course is very popular these days. And then on the other side of that is where all the court sports are. It is absolutely enormous and very hard to describe just how big it is. It's just a shame it's taken 13 years to get here.
And $500 million. Mike, appreciate that update. Cheers, mate. Good to see you. Mike Thorpe, Herald Christchurch senior reporter, comparing that to the from Spain. It's just gone 14 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Coming up next, the differences between boys and girls when it comes to learning maths. Why boys learn earlier. Then later, Herald political editor Thomas Coughlan on the Israel situation and a couple of other issues, but mainly with Israel. Should we be worried that the United States doesn't like our stance in joining the UK and Canada and a bunch of other countries banning 2 Israeli ministers? Thomas Coughlan with us after 8.
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it.
You Do It delivers high-quality New Zealand-made flat-pack DIY kitchen cabinetry. With flexible widths at your fingertips, it makes designing easy. All at an affordable price because you order online and cut out the middleman. You can even upgrade your dream kitchen with You Do It stylish and clever options, like choosing wall cabinets with overhanging doors, or select from a range of pull-out storage solutions. Add premium soft-close drawers and ask to stretch the height, width or depth of your cabinets. Upgrade your kitchen today and head to nzherald.co.nz.
Welcome back to Herald Now. Great to have your company. Get in touch this morning, Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. We'd love to hear your views and share them throughout the program. Do you think boys are just naturally better at maths? I didn't write this. New research out of France has found that children start school with roughly the same mathematical abilities, but after just 4 months, a gender gap has emerged in favour of the boys. So what's going on here? Jodie Hunter is with the Institute of Education at Massey University, used to be a primary school teacher. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. So they go in, the boys and girls go in with the same level, and then after 4 months the boys pull ahead. What do we think's behind it?
Yeah, the authors of the study do make a point of saying that this is nothing to do with innate ability. Instead, it's to do with what happens in the classroom.
As in, boys respond better to in-classroom teaching?
Not necessarily. So, I mean, across our society, we have something that's been picked up called brilliance bias, which is basically this idea that there's some subjects at school that you have to be brilliant at to succeed in. And mathematics and science are two of those subjects. And then this brilliance bias is often associated with males.
So you think potentially what you were saying is that the teachers are educating the boys on maths more because they have a bias that says the boys will be better at it or understand it better?
Not just teachers, society in general. So, I mean, parents can cultivate that as well because, you know, and this is what they report in the study as well, is that because there might be a tendency for us to think that males are going to be better at maths, then we notice when they're doing things which are positive in maths and kind of exemplify that. And for the girls in the study, they found that there was a tendency for the girls to be stronger in the language. You know, language is reading and writing. And so then as parents, you might notice that your children are doing really well at it, so then you support it and encourage them to do it more.
Controversial take, but what if they just are better at doing different things?
I haven't found any studies to say that that's definitively the fact. And I think in New Zealand it's quite interesting because we haven't got data to say that we have a gender gap in New Zealand, but what we do have, which is a little bit similar, is that Ministry of Education has undertaken studies which show most children start similar at the same levels, but what happens in our country is that Māori and Pacific children start falling behind other ethnicities overall.
Right, and that's to do with what's happening in the classroom?
It's to do with what's happening in the classroom. I mean, I think you can look at other factors like socioeconomic factors as well.
When we say that boys and girls, in this case in France, come to school with the same level of understanding of maths, does that mean that they all know nothing?
No, children should come to school knowing a lot of mathematics. You know, you can't come to school knowing nothing. So it's a lot of informal activities that you're doing, you know, things like fractions when you're sharing things, division, you know, you share things out as parents and ask children to share things between them, doing puzzles, all of those kinds of things, building blocks, geometry.
So what happens after, so this is after 4 months, there's a gap, there's a disparity. What happens by the time you leave school? You know, does that gap close? Does it actually just naturally correct itself again?
No, what they've found in that particular study was that the gap got larger and larger as the children progressed through school. And I mean, I think in our context, we could say that we may not be finding a gender gap in terms of school assessments. We don't do large-scale tests like were used in the study in primary school. But what we can say is that there's definitely a gender gap in terms of who is choosing to go into mathematics at higher education in terms of university study.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Thanks so much for coming in, Jodie.
No worries.
Great to have you. That's
Thank you.
Jodie Hunter, who is with us, the Massey University Institute of Education. It's 8 minutes away from 8 now. The US has criticised us for sanctions on Israel. Winston Peters joined our allies Canada and Australia and a bunch of others, banning Israel's finance minister and national security minister from travelling here. The US has now denounced these sanctions, saying we should instead be focused more on Hamas. This morning on Early Edition on News Talk ZB, I was joined by Robert Patman, International Relations Professor. I started off by asking if we should be worried about repercussions from the United States.
Remains to be seen. The thing is that the status quo, the situation as it is at the moment, it's just not sustainable. You've got, after the shocking Hamas attack on the 7th of October 2023, when 1,200 Israelis or so were killed, we subsequently had what Mr. Netanyahu calls a campaign of mighty vengeance in Gaza, in which more than 54,000 Palestinians, many of a substantial number of whom had nothing to do with Hamas, have been killed. So, and there's no ceasefire at the moment, and there's a humanitarian blockade that has been reimposed since early March, with 1 million Palestinians facing starvation. Given this situation, and given the fact that Israel has not responded to verbal appeals to lift the humanitarian blockade, I think that countries that want a two-state solution, and Mr. Netanyahu doesn't want a two-state solution, have little option but to show some serious statement of intent, and that starts with sanctions.
Netanyahu's turned around and basically middle-fingered this. Will we get more sanctions?
It's possible, and it's also possible the sanctions will be widened. There's a lot of strength of feeling in many liberal democracies. The United States is not a disinterested observer when it comes to the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I think it's been a weakness and a failure of US leadership. The situation has got to this point. Shouldn't be forgotten that the US has exercised the veto 5 times in UN Security Council to thwart a ceasefire when the overwhelming majorities, and we're talking about more than 140 members of the UN General Assembly, actually want a ceasefire. So this, in a sense, the US has perpetuated this conflict. It's provided about 4/5 of the munitions that Israel has used in the conflict. The US is not a disinterested observer in this, and in a sense, I think the other liberal democracies are beginning to push back now and say, look, international law is important, and we have to uphold it. And talk alone, well, it's clearly not working.
No. So yeah, our UN obviously hamstrung. I mean, totally useless. Trump is criticising us for banning a couple of Israeli ministers who weren't going to travel here anyway. So what hope do we have that he's actually going to... I mean, who cares? Does he listen to the international community?
Yeah, but look, matters of war and peace shouldn't rest just on the shoulders of Mr. Trump. He doesn't get it right on everything. And the fact of the matter is, you can't stand by while war crimes are being committed on a daily basis with impunity. And I think the majority of people in the world would like to see a much more authoritative mechanism for dealing with conflicts like this. And I think it's not going to happen. You mentioned that the UN Security Council is pretty useless. I agree. It's useless because 5 members of the UN Security Council use and abuse something called the veto privilege. And that's got to stop. But, New Zealand's been against the veto since Peter Fraser back in the 40s. But what I'm saying here is that, Ryan, sanctions may be a tentative start and they may be belated. I think they are very late. But you've got to, if you're serious about bringing about a two-state solution, and Mr. Netanyahu has always ruled out a two-state solution, you actually have to start with some measure that shows that you're not prepared to go on just accepting the status quo in which so many people are suffering so horribly.
It was Robert Patman, International Relations Professor, talking to me earlier on News Talk ZB. Right now it is 3 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Time for our sports panel with the Herald's Bonnie Jansen and Chris Reeve. Good morning, guys.
G'day.
Now, we'll get to lots to talk about today, so we'll start with Super Rugby. We've got the semis, Bonnie, this weekend, and the Blues and the Crusaders will be the big one to watch.
That's the big one, but it's kind of probably like the one that everyone, it's hard to pick a winner. Who do you want to win? Like the Crusaders, you don't really want them going through to the final, and the Blues won it last year, so it's kind of the best of a bad bunch, I guess. But it is the last time that a possibly the last time they'll play at Apollo Stadiums down in Christchurch, because the new big stadium's opening next season. That's, of course, if the Crusaders win.
Yes, because, yeah, true. But they haven't lost semi there. Well, they haven't lost much there.
No,
ever.
The Blues have only had one win in 15 games down there, so
Right.
the odds are very much not in their favour.
Not in their favour. But if they pulled it off, what a story that would be.
I mean, the odds weren't in their favour last week either.
True.
You know, 6 versus first, they came out and got the job done over the Chiefs, and you know, they're a confident side. They'll be backing themselves to win down there, and make things very interesting for the Saturday night game.
What about a guy backing himself to win over in Canada, Ryan Fox, and you've been speaking to him in the last couple of days, and he's back for the US Open tomorrow, right?
He is, yeah. So it's a bit of a whirlwind trip for Ryan. He wasn't qualified for the US Open until he won in Canada, and he had to make some very last-minute arrangements, get down to Pittsburgh for the tournament at Oakmont, and he goes into arguably the toughest course in the world. You know, they play in 5-inch thick rough where it's designed for the ball to sink in. Makes life very hard for the golfers.
It doesn't sound like a lot of fun. He must get a sore arm after a while. I mean, how many competitions do you do back to back?
He's done a lot. I think he's done 4 or 5 in the last 5 weeks. So he's had a really good run though. You know, in his last 4 tournaments, he's won 2, and Scotty Scheffler won the other 2. So it's pretty good company.
It's fantastic. Yeah. Speaking of fantastic, our fingers are crossed for Liam Lawson. He is back he's in Canada this weekend, actually.
Yes, Liam Lawson obviously has a lot to prove. There's a bit of movement in the Red Bull camp. They've just recently given Arvid Lindblad, I think that's how you pronounce it, he's the F2 driver, the academy driver for Red Bull, and he's been given dispensation because Max Verstappen, obviously he's accumulated almost enough points to be suspended, so they're kind of seeing who's underneath. So Liam Lawson has to kind of keep proving himself. Maybe he'll get a call back to Red Bull in a few weeks. We're not sure, but obviously his last results, 8th and 11th.
Not great. It's tough. It's a tough gig, isn't it? But
it is.
Hey, let's finish on a positive note this morning, shall we? This is Violet Perry, who is playing water polo over in the States.
Yes, well, she's just graduated actually from Yale. Dame Jacinda Ardern spoke at her graduation of all people, but she played in the men's Yale water polo team for 2 years, which is just crazy. She just randomly was training with the women's team, and then the men's coach said, hey, you'd be good in our team. Your skills are exceptional, and come and join us. And she was there for 2 years and, you know, played amongst, these big, tall, 25 American guys. And she said when she first arrived at the pool, her opposition mistaken her for a girlfriend or a physio, and no, she was a player, and she scored lots of goals.
That's impressive, because you've got to be very strong.
Notoriously feisty, that sport.
Right, yeah. It's what happens underwater stays underwater.
That's the one.
Hey, very quickly, the Warriors have a bye this weekend, so that's automatic 2 points for them, isn't it?
Yeah, how good.
Yeah, great. Hey, thanks, guys. Good to see you. Chris Reeve and Herald sports journalist Chris Reeve and Bonnie Jansen. It is now just after 8 o'clock. You're watching Herald Now. G'day, good morning everyone. Welcome to Herald Now. I'm Ryan Bridge. Thursday the 12th of June, on the show this hour, big win for Bull with the government contract for all state houses. Who else is flying high at field days? We'll check in. Is the quarter acre dream back? New data shows houses are winning the battle over townhouses and apartments. Who wants a townhouse when you can have a house? And the future of public transport in Auckland. We're on board a new electric ferry. Can they charge it? Plus, lots more. Neva is here with news.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
New Zealand's export revenue from food and fibres is forecast to surpass $60 billion for the first time. Agriculture and Forestry Minister Todd McClay says strong global demand and healthy prices across key markets are positioning us for record growth. The latest Situation and Outlook for Primary Industries report projects export earnings of $59.9 billion with the year ending later this month. That's $3 billion higher than expected in December. And Macleay says with this momentum, it's on track to reach $65.7 billion by 2029. Heavy hitters include dairy exports lifting 16% to a record $27 billion and horticulture rising 19% to $8.5 billion. Meanwhile, Beef and Lamb New Zealand is concerned whether the settings around farm to forest conversions go far enough. Todd Macleay has introduced legislation to stop large-scale conversions. Research shows nearly 39,000 hectares of whole sheep and beef farms have been sold since the last report in September. Beef and Lamb New Zealand chair Kate Ackland says they're not anti-forestry, they just support trees in steep, less productive country. A New York jury has found Harvey Weinstein guilty on a sex crimes charge in a retrial. It comes after an appeals court last year overturned the former movie mogul's 2020 conviction. Weinstein, once one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, was accused by prosecutors of raping an aspiring actress and assaulting 2 other women. The 73-year-old pleaded not guilty and has denied assaulting anyone or having non-consensual sex. The jury has found Weinstein guilty on 1 of the 3 counts he faced, not guilty on a 2nd count, and did not reach a verdict on the 3rd count. Facial recognition technology could soon be rolled out by some of the country's largest retailers. Woolworths, The Warehouse, Briscoes, Rebel Sport, Bunnings, Mitre 10, Farmers, Michael Hill, Spark and 1NZ are all supporting the use of the tech. It follows a successful trial by Foodstuffs in some New World and Pack and Save stores. Retail NZ Chief Executive Carolyn Young says retailers are working on ways to include the tech as part of their existing security measures.
Really focusing on how do we keep our staff safe, because we've seen this increasing level of violent and aggressive behaviour towards staff.
Co-founder of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, has died aged 82. Wilson co-founded the boy band in 1961 with his brothers Dennis and Carl, their cousin Mike Love and friend Al Jardine. He was the last surviving brother and visionary leader and songwriter of hits like Surfin' USA and Good Vibrations.
Is everybody gonna sing along with us? I'm picking up your vibration. She's been me
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
South Africa are 43 for 4 at stumps, responding to Australia's 212 after the opening day of cricket's World Test Championship final at Lords. Lulu Sun and American doubles tennis partner Ann Lee have lost their first match at the WTA's latest grass court event in the Netherlands in straight sets. Female tennis players wanting to freeze eggs or embryos to start a family at a later date will now have their ranking protected by the WTA Tour. Taranaki have successfully defended the Ranfurly Shield for the first time in 2025 with a 78-7 win over King Country in New Plymouth.
It is just gone 8 minutes after 8 and you're watching Herald Now. The first video of the sun's south pole have been sent back to Earth by the Solar Orbiter spacecraft, which is the European Space Agency. The new images... Wow, look at that. It's like... Wow. This is, it'll help scientists understand how the sun goes between periods of storm and quiet. It's because the intense solar activity can affect satellite comms and knock out power grids here on Earth. So these are the first images that you will ever see, have ever seen, of the sun's south pole. There you go, the bit that don't shine. 6 after 8, here is weather.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. The instability over central New Zealand remains today, with a low lying just off the west coast of the South Island and a nor'west flow over the north. So the risk remains for thunderstorms today for some, but at this stage just one heavy rain watch is in place for North Otago through till 5 o'clock this afternoon, with a moderate chance of upgrading to an orange warning. So occasional rain across the day for Dunedin, with the chance of showers for Southland. Showers will clear for you Queenstown this morning. Mostly cloudy with showers for the upper half of the south. Christchurch and Ashburton, you can expect more rain than those on the west coast, with strong sou'easterlies for South Canterbury. Taranaki, you do have conditions right for thunderstorms again today, this morning, then again tonight, with strong nor'westerlies. Any showers here will be this morning, but becoming few and far between this afternoon. Winds will be from the north or nor'west, could be strong this afternoon for those around Gisborne. And more showers today for the upper north, with possible heavy falls and thunderstorms with hail for Auckland, west of the city this morning, but easing for a time this afternoon and early tonight.
You're watching Herald Now. It is 8 after 8. The government is this morning lauding a new deal that will see all kāinga ora homes furnished, new when it needs replacing of course, furnished with woolen carpets from next month. The Herald's political editor Thomas Colkin is with us from Wellington. Hey Thomas.
Morning, Ryan.
Good to see you. This is quite a big deal for the industry because it's a massive contract, but also something that's been bubbling away, and you know, New Zealand First has been involved. A whole bunch of politicians have been pushing for this, and this is quite significant.
Yes, this has been bubbling away for many, many years now. The wool price in New Zealand has been a long-standing bugbear. I mean, you could argue it goes all the way back to the collapse in the wool price after the Korean War, which put us on this decades-long economic trajectory that we're on now. More recently, of course, there has been a bugbear around synthetics and the use of synthetic fibres all around the world, and then adding insult to injury is the fact that the government got in on the synthetic fibre train as well. State homes, government buildings had synthetic fibres installed in them. New Zealand First was constantly banging the drum about wanting to actually install New Zealand wool fibres in carpets and government buildings. They have now won that battle. Kāinga Ora says that as of next month, all state houses or new state houses will have woolen carpets. That's around 4,500 state houses over the next 3 years. The government's also directed that other government agencies, when installing carpets, should have wool as their first preference when it's practicable to do so. So that's around 130 government agencies. So it'll be interesting to see how many of them go for wool carpets too. Kāinga Ora says that this contract will mean no extra cost to Kāinga Ora. So that is the tender was so competitive that wool has managed to compete with synthetics.
That's incredible because, go back to, was it the state houses or the classrooms, and the wool industry was basically locked out of even putting a tender in because they said their prices they assumed would be too high. So this is quite incredible that they've managed to come in competitively.
There was a controversy in December that Kāinga Ora put out the tender and only synthetic fibres were asked to compete.
Yeah, so clearly they've shown them, haven't they? Now, let's move on to Israel, because our government has joined with Australia and Canada and a bunch of others, the UK, in sanctioning these two far-right Israeli ministers. The US has come out and said, you focus on Hamas, what are you doing? Should the government be worried about blowback from the US?
Hard to say. We are in the middle of the pack here. We're not the only country that has sanctioned these ministers. It was a joint effort from several countries. And New Zealand in general on Israel has not stuck its head above the parapet and has generally moved along with countries in the European Union, countries like the UK, Australia, Canada. So we're not alone in what we've done here in sanctioning these two ministers, including the finance minister who gave an interview to The Economist this week, which was positioned around that minister being quite hardline. If there is blowback, that, as you say, the State Department has issued a statement criticising the decision. But if there is blowback, it would be blowback to several other countries as well.
Thomas, just finally, what's up with the House sitting schedule at the moment? I asked Chris Hipkins about this the other day. He said it's a question for Chris Bishop, who we haven't had on the show for any other reasons. I haven't got to it. But it seems like week on, week off, week on, week off. What's going on?
Yeah, I crunched the numbers on this for you. We're at about 83 sitting days this year. The average is about 90 over history. It is a wee bit lower now because we have the 2 scrutiny weeks. So next week the House isn't sitting, but there is scrutiny week. So the backbenchers will be in scrutinising the budget. So for all intents and purposes, Parliament will be functioning, even though the House won't be sitting. The record is about is 34 weeks, I think. Currently, it's about 30 weeks. So Helen Clark in 2000 had 34 weeks, which would be over 100 sitting days, and we're sitting at below 80. So that's where it positions itself. But if you include the scrutiny week, we are at about average.
Okay, so the last time anyone really worked hard was Helen Clark days. But you could actually argue, you know, it's interesting with the scrutiny weeks, that you get more out of those than you would out of a question time.
Yeah, I'd look, if someone asked me to pick between a scrutiny week and a question time, I'd probably go for a scrutiny week. Yeah. So I think I personally think that 80 something days plus 2 scrutiny weeks is better than 90 days and no scrutiny weeks. So yeah, I perhaps would accept the government's excuse there.
Yeah.
But certainly, in terms of the legislative timetable, if the government has a busy legislative agenda and is using a lot of urgency as it is at the moment, then maybe it is time to think about putting your Helen Clark hat on, pretending it's the year 2000, and going for over 100 sitting days.
Yeah, put your big pants on and get out there. I appreciate your time, Thomas. Thomas Coughlan, the Herald's political editor, with us from Wellington this morning. We all know farmers have ditched their chores for a few days this week for field days. Well, Business Desk reporter Riley Kennedy is there for us this morning. G'day, Riley. How are you? How's your field days experience so far?
Morning, Ryan. Field days is great. It is my favourite week of the year. But I think the feeling's really positive here. I think I've been to 6 in a row, and I'd say this is probably the best that it's ever been. Yesterday we had all the CEOs and Miles Hurrell and the Dan Boltons of this world come in here and meet and greet their shareholders and farmers and talk to us. Everyone seems to be in quite good spirits. It appears to be, I would say, less political this year. Last year it was the government's first crack at coming to field days, and then the year before that was election year. So I think it seems less political. Everyone's just having a good time, having a few steak sandwiches. It's really good.
Good. The thing I was thinking about the payout. Is it translating? Do we have any? You know, I mean, you've been there anecdotally. Are people buying lots of stuff?
Yeah, I talked to one farmer yesterday, and I said, "Are you going to buy a new Hilux?" And he said, "No, I just want a new chainsaw." This time last year, the payout milk price was around $8, and that was around or at break even, so they didn't have that much money. But this year it's up around 10, which is about $1.50 over break even, so they've got a lot more cash. But I don't know whether they are going to spend, but they've definitely got a lot more cash to go and buy a new chainsaw and things like that.
I guess there might be a little bit of paying down some debt or other priorities, or just saving for a rainy day too, particularly after what they've been through.
Yeah, I think while everyone's pretty confident about the place, Donald Trump keeps coming up here. Everyone knows that the geopolitical environment is very fragile at the moment, and that could turn the milk price or red meat prices pretty quickly. I mean, the red meat price, I was looking at land price this morning, it was around $6 a kg this time last year. Had lunch at AFCO yesterday, it's up over 10. But that could change very quickly if something happens north of New Zealand.
Very good point. Riley, we'll leave you there to enjoy yourself and get on with field days. But hey, let's celebrate. It's a fantastic year, as you said. You've been there for 6 years, best you've seen it. So that's fantastic news, and we will enjoy the profits of that. Appreciate it. Riley Kennedy from Field Days Business Desk reporter with us live. 16 minutes after 8 o'clock now. Coming up, our panel gets to grips with the issues of the day. Martin Snedden and Maria Slade are here at the desk. Later, a look at the new electric ferries that are coming for Auckland. Can they charge them? That's the only question. All that and a lot more straight after this.
Ah, here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference, but 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost center reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
can have what she's having.
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years, but I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time, and so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
You're watching Herald Now. It's 18 after 8. We'll get to our panel in just a second. Right now, 3 Auckland club rugby players have been suspended after an opposition player was coward punched in the jaw, causing a seizure on the field. The incident happening at Bell Park in East Auckland on May 24th. For more, Benjamin Plummer, the Herald reporter across the story. Good morning.
Good morning.
What happened here?
So essentially during a club game last month, 2 players got in a bit of a scuffle after a maul, and a player from the Manukau Rovers side elbowed one of the Pakuranga players in the head, causing it to fall to the ground. Another Manukau player came up behind after that and punched the victim in the jaw, to which he then had an apparent seizure on the field.
Punched him while he was down?
Yeah, correct. So the initial elbow caused him to fall on his butt. And after that, the Manukau player came up behind him.
Jeez, that is brutal.
Yeah.
What's the punishment?
So 3 players have been handed down suspensions from the Independent Judicial Committee. 1 player has received 8 weeks, another 6, and another has received a 1-week suspension. So police have also charged a 24-year-old man with assault, and he's due to appear in court later this month.
Any reaction from either of the teams to this yet?
We approached Manukau Rovers for comment. They declined to comment, and the Pakuranga has been approached for comment.
That's brutal, absolutely brutal. But I mean, I suppose at least there have been some consequences. I appreciate you coming on the show, Benjamin.
Pleasure.
Good to have you here. That's Benjamin Plummer, the New Zealand Herald reporter who's been across the story from Bell Park, the incident happening in East Auckland on May the 24th. Time now is 20 after 8. Air New Zealand is to start flights to New Western Sydney Airport by mid-2027. Greg Foran is on the show tomorrow. So we thought we'd take this opportunity. Oh, look at that. They're going to have a new airport by when? Less than 2 years' time. This is Western Sydney. Greg Foran on the show tomorrow. And we just thought we'd put a call out for anyone who has any questions for Greg Foran, because he'll be here at the desk tomorrow. Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. That's Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. Send them in now, and you'll do half my job for me, which would be nice. 21 minutes after 8 o'clock now. Time for our panel of the day. Martin Snedden, Sports Administrator, former Black Cap, of course, and Maria Slade, Business Desk Property Editor, with us live at the desk. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Now, we're talking about wool to start with, because this is a big deal to our sheep farmers. My father-in-law has been in this business and said it's basically cheaper to leave the wool on there than it is to get it off, Martin. Pleased with this.
Desperately hoping this was one of the topics we wouldn't quite get to, because I know stuff all about it, but it was really encouraging to hear that they'd secured the contract. I do have some friends who are farmers, and I've occasionally asked them what happens to the wool, and it's usually been a pretty sad story. So if there's a bit of hope at the end of the tunnel, great.
How much wool do you use in your life? Do you have wool carpet, or do you have...
Oh, I've got all birds on at the moment.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Should I put them on screen?
Go on then. Let's see Martin Snedden's shoes.
Good work.
Oh, they're nice ones too.
Excellent.
I've got some of the boots, which are quite nice, quite comfortable. Yeah. Maria, this is great for the industry, and I spoke to Wayne Langford this morning. He said it's not just a superficial thing. He said this will actually turn the dial a bit for them.
Well, this is the thing. Wool carpet in a lot of circumstances is not actually that much dearer than, or often not dearer than solution dyed nylon, and it's just as good. I mean, it's strong. It's better for things like if you've got asthma or, you know, it's a fire retardant, and so there's a lot of good reasons to have wool. So it's really great that Kāinga is taking this, or the government's making Kāinga take this step. And my business desk colleague Riley Kennedy, who you spoke to just before, he can take a wee bit of credit for this, because he was the one that broke the story about the fact that the State Housing Agency was not including wool in its request.
Now, in hindsight, how ridiculous do they look? Because the tender, as we've heard this morning, came in quite competitively with the nylon equivalent.
Exactly, that's right.
So to just exclude them from the get-go was... Yeah.
I personally won't have anything else in my house except wool carpet.
Well, there we go. You're walking the talk. So the other thing we've been talking about this morning is euthanasia and, well, assisted dying. And this bill that has passed, and we know hundreds of New Zealanders have taken the opportunity and have used this legislation to end their lives in a way that they see as peaceful. But some concerns this morning from the Maxim Institute about just the record keeping, the sort of back end of all of this stuff. Yeah. They're quite worried that you need to be, you need to have your house in order because it's quite a serious thing.
It is, and it was pretty divisive, the whole conversation about whether it should even come into play. So once it did, and the framework is there, the framework has to be followed because, as your guest said earlier this morning, it's legalising killing people. So if that's the case, and there are specific rules that have to be followed, then follow them properly and make sure that if that's looked at afterwards, that it's really transparent that that has been the case.
Yeah. Do you think, is it something that you've thought about? Like if when we get to the end of our lives, I like to think that the option would be there for me if I needed it?
Absolutely. We don't do it to animals. Why should people not have that option? And I think you also have to question where the Maxim Institute is coming from in researching this, because it does take a very conservative standpoint on a lot of issues. So, I don't know whether they're philosophically opposed to it, but you'd sort of wonder whether perhaps they are.
I think they are. I think we can say they are.
But having said all of that, the lack of record keeping does sound like a problem.
Yes, I agree. I think regardless of whether you agree with it or not, that's just sort of a basic thing you should have in order.
But the other point that your guest made this morning was the access to palliative care, and so I guess it's about an informed choice and people understanding what's available to them, and if there are certain options that are not killing yourself and could be made available and could help that time of life, then you would hope that that's available to all.
Yeah. What we're going to do is take a quick break and come back with some more upbeat topics. Maria Slade from Business Desk and Sports Administrator, former Black Cap, Martin Sneddon, straight ahead.
Do It DIY can make your new dream kitchen a reality. As a trusted Kiwi manufacturer for 44 years, Do It has made it easy to design, order and assemble your own dream kitchen, offering a range of colour options and flexible sizing. With excellent online support, our customers all agree that Do It makes DIY easy, delivering superb quality at a great price. Get your project started today at newsroom.co.nz.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it.
After 20 seasons on the footy field, it's fair to say I know a thing or two about resilience, just like Kaiwaka wet weather gear. Digging deep when the going gets tough. Kaiwaka, designed to perform, made to outlast.
We have completed 4 builds with GJ. Every time we want to think of building, we always go back to GJ.
It's a really good experience throughout the whole process.
They deliver what they promise on, and it feels like working with a family member. It's very easy and trustworthy to work with GJ.
Sing your heart out to Coast's feel-good 80s hits. Kenny Loggins, Whitney, John Farnham, Eurythmics, Bonnie Tyler, Eric Carmen. The most 80s are on Coast. Sing your heart out. Coast.
Welcome back. You're watching Herald Now, and our panel this morning, Martin Snedden, Sports Administrator, former Black Cap, and Maria Slade, Business Desk Property Editor at the desk. Guys, welcome back. Some sad news this morning for Beach Boys fans. Brian Wilson, who's a singer-songwriter, lead frontman of the Beach Boys, has sadly passed away at the age of 82, and I know you were a big fan, Martin.
Oh, it's the first music I can remember, you know, the Surfing USA album, and I always loved being at the beach, and so it all resonated. So I've always had a soft spot for the Beach Boys. I tried, you know, later on I read a fair bit about Brian Wilson, and it was a really sad story. You know, it came through that it's basically drugs had fried him, and he was a pretty difficult character for a long time. But and then it emerged that he had a pretty hard upbringing. Well, the family had, the kids. So the whole thing was a bit sad, really, for a group that brought so much joy to everyone.
Which, in a strange way, was, I guess, kind of the point. That for him, anyway, he'd spoken about the fact that he had such a tough upbringing and he wanted just to bring happy music to the world, which they did.
Exactly, they did. And like my favourite song is probably God Only Knows, and I know it from the series Big Love, which was the story, that was the theme song to that series about the Mormon family, the polygamous Mormon family.
Right.
So that's where I know it from. I'm maybe just slightly younger than you, Martin. The first album I ever bought was Eagles, The Long Run.
I love the Eagles too.
Yeah. But yeah, it's all that really uplifting kind of music. That was their trade, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that is a shame.
Yeah, apparently he used to play under the piano. He would have a box of sand, so he could have his feet in the sand as if he were at the beach. One of the sort of quick.
He was put in care, you know.
Yes, because he got dementia towards the end, didn't he?
Well, not even so much towards the end, like from a much earlier stage than you would think. He was a court case, and it was really sad when you read the story, and I saw a film on it too. I'm sounding like an expert on Brian Wilson this morning, but you know, it's just that he'd done so much brilliant stuff, and he was a creative genius.
Yes.
But then life had turned sour.
Yeah. Well, what we can say of him is that he made us all smile and dance.
Totally.
Hey?
Indeed.
Thanks so much for coming on this morning, guys. Great to have you as our panels and guests today. That is Martin Snedden, Sports Administrator, former Black Cap, and Maria Slade, Business Desk Property Editor. Time is 8:30. Here's Neva with news.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
New Zealand's export revenue from food and fibres is forecast to surpass $60 billion for the first time. Agriculture and Forestry Minister Todd McClay says strong global demand and healthy prices across key markets are positioning us for record growth. The latest Situation and Outlook for Primary Industries report projects export earnings of $59.9 billion with a year ending later this month. That's $3 billion higher than expected in December. And McClay says with this momentum, it's on track to reach $65.7 billion by 2029. Heavy hitters include dairy exports lifting 16% to a record $27 billion and horticulture rising 19% to $8.5 billion. Meanwhile, Beef and Lamb New Zealand is concerned whether the settings around farm to forest conversions go far enough. Todd McClay has introduced legislation to stop large-scale conversions. Research shows nearly 39,000 hectares of whole sheep and beef farms have been sold since the last report in September. Beef and Lamb New Zealand Chair Kate Ackland says they're not anti-forestry, they just support trees in steep, less productive country. A New York jury has found Harvey Weinstein guilty on a sex crimes charge in a retrial. It comes after an appeals court last year overturned the former movie mogul's 2020 conviction. Weinstein, once one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, was accused by prosecutors of raping an aspiring actress and assaulting 2 other women. The 73-year-old pleaded not guilty and has denied assaulting anyone or having non-consensual sex. The jury has found Weinstein guilty on 1 of the 3 counts he faced, not guilty on a second count, and did not reach a verdict on the 3rd count. Facial recognition technology could soon be rolled out by some of the country's largest retailers. Woolworths, The Warehouse, Briscoes, Rebel Sport, Bunnings, Mitre 10, Farmers, Michael Hill, Spark and 1NZ are all supporting the use of the tech. It follows a successful trial by Foodstuffs in some New World and Pack and Save stores. Retail NZ Chief Executive Carolyn Young says retailers are working on ways to include the tech as part of their existing security measures.
Really focusing on how do we keep our staff safe, because we've seen this increasing level of violent and aggressive behaviour towards staff.
Co-founder of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, has died aged 82. Wilson co-founded the boy band in 1961 with his brothers Dennis and Carl, their cousin Mike Love and friend Al Jardine. He was the last surviving brother and visionary leader and songwriter of hits like Surfin' USA and Good Vibrations.
Is everybody gonna sing along with us? I'm picking up good vibration. She's giving me
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
South Africa are 43 for 4 at stumps, responding to Australia's 212 after the opening day of cricket's World Test Championship final at Lords. Lulu Sun and American doubles tennis partner Anne Lee have lost their first match at the WTA's latest grass court event in the Netherlands in straight sets. Female tennis players wanting to freeze eggs or embryos to start a family at a later date will now have their ranking protected by the WTA Tour. Taranaki have successfully defended the Ranfurly Shield for the first time in 2025 with a 78-7 win over King Country in New Plymouth.
You're watching Herald Now. It is 26 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Tourism New Zealand has revamped its 100% Pure New Zealand campaign because we are neither pure nor 100% pure. No, I don't know why they've done it, but it's $5.5 million. They've done a new international rollout. Have a look. Okay. I mean, what, $5.5 million? How did that cost $5.5 million? Is that, I'm hoping that includes the cost of putting it places around the world. Because if they paid $5.5 million for those nice shots, they used the same ones from last time. Anyway, here's some numbers that came out yesterday on visitor arrivals. April were, I'm just being told there's a 90-second version of that ad. We just played you the 30-second version of the ad. Still, whether it's 30 or 90, Paul, it's a lot of money. It's not worth $5.5 million. Anyway, we'll find out whether... can we find out, Nancy, if that includes... Yeah, good. Right, April, these are the numbers. 267,000, that is the number of visitor arrivals in New Zealand. That's up 42,000 from this time last year. That is good. Biggest increases, Australia up 8,800, and the UK up 4,000. Tourist numbers are now at 87% overall of what they were pre-COVID. So still a little way to go. Maybe this campaign, as expensive as it may be, will help. It is 24 away from 9.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. The instability over central New Zealand remains today, with a low lying just off the west coast of the South Island and a nor'west flow over the north. So the risk remains for thunderstorms today for some, but at this stage just one heavy rain watch is in place for North Otago through till 5 o'clock this afternoon, with a moderate chance of upgrading to an orange warning. So occasional rain across the day for Dunedin, with the chance of showers for Southland. Showers will clear for you Queenstown this morning. Mostly cloudy with showers for the upper half of the south. Christchurch and Ashburton, you can expect more rain than those on the west coast, with strong sou'easterlies for South Canterbury. Taranaki, you do have conditions right for thunderstorms again today, this morning, then again tonight, with strong nor'westerlies. Any showers here will be this morning, but becoming few and far between this afternoon. Winds will be from the north or northwest, could be strong this afternoon for those around Gisborne. And more showers today for the upper north, with possible heavy falls and thunderstorms with hail for Auckland, west of the city this morning, but easing for a time this afternoon and early tonight.
23 to 9, you're on Herald Now. Auckland's first all-electric ferry is on the water, but getting the megawatt chargers onto the piers to actually charge the thing is running behind schedule at the moment. Funding for more vessels is also uncertain, with much of it now on hold until at least 2028. Technology editor Chris Keel went along to the technical launch yesterday. Have a watch.
From a market perspective, Michael's done a fantastic job of building the EV Maritime brand internationally, and we really are seen as a leading light in the electrification of fast commuter ferry services internationally. Now to have a product on the water with this first vessel for Auckland Transport really catapults us right into the leading position. So there are a lot of eyes on us, and the work that we've done on probably 4 or 5 opportunities internationally, those people are watching and they'll be visiting.
And then domestically, we see this really as the beginning of a sort of zero emission future for the Auckland ferry fleet, subject to proving that they work really well and the funding falling in place for that over time.
Chris Keel, our technology editor, is with me at the desk. Chris, good morning.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I noticed about that, it wasn't moving.
Yeah, they've got it into the water, which is great. And I've got a personal stake in this myself. I'm a ferry commuter on one of the 27 current diesel ferries. I mean, they stink. They sound as noisy as 10,000 lawnmowers. So I was really pleased when Fuller's started off this process by putting forward some money for some new electric ferries, and then AT and other agencies taking it over. And it's great to see the first fully electric boat in the water. But now it's got to go through a lot of testing, and they've been very reserved about saying when it will actually be ready for passengers.
Does that mean that actually electrifying ferries is harder than they thought?
Well, they always knew it was going to be a bit tricky. Way back in 2023, they put out a tender for a $28 million tender for chargers, and the Swedish multinational ABB won that contract. This was in 2023, and they said these 4 megawatt chargers would all be ready by December 2024. And one is almost ready at Half Moon Bay, which will be the first route for the first 4 electric ferries. But they Fuller's model is to have 2 ferries crisscrossing, so you really need a charger on either side. But the charger for the downtown terminal only went out to consent in December, and that process is still going on. And we know that Councillor Mike Lee has called it an eyesore, and Heritage NZ has had issues. So this big 2-storey structure with 2 3.3 megawatt chargers, it's still in the consent process, and then the whole process of building it and Vector putting lines into it, and it's going to draw about as much power as Queenstown. It's a major operation.
Wow.
So the first electric ferry could be in operation in about 6 months, and the second one about 6 months after, but how to charge them with those 10-minute top-up charges without the twin chargers, that's going to be tricky.
So is that how much electricity it would take to power them? Is it enough to power Queenstown?
Yeah. That's what I've heard. A mid-sized town, it's 2 3.3 megawatt chargers at the downtown ferry, so that's quite a major operation. Slightly better news, if not from a pollution point of view, is that 2 of the ferries on the way are hybrids, so they have both electric motors and diesel generators. And Fuller says it would prefer to be able to charge them if AT gets its act together and the government, but as things stand, they'll probably be going back and forth between the city and Devonport using their diesel generators, so it'll be just as noisy and polluting as today.
Right, okay. Well, that's great, isn't it? So basically we're just waiting for Mike Lee to get over the fact that it's an ugly battery and we're an ugly charger and we can get on with it.
Yeah, and I think ideally they should have just kicked off the whole process a couple of years ago, and the other issue is that a lot of the funding they're expecting has sort of disappeared. ECA, the energy efficiency Authority has had its budget halved, and a whole lot of parties who are chipping in have seen funding evaporate.
Government's closed its wallet, so they've got to look elsewhere.
Hard yards.
Chris, appreciate your time this morning. Great
Cheers.
to have the update. Fascinating insight too. Chris Keel, who is with us, he's technology editor at the New Zealand Herald. It's 18 away from 8 o'clock now. Coming up, Chelsea Daniels from the Front Page podcast here to talk about New Zealand's ban on these 2 Israeli government ministers. Does it matter? I mean, it's not like they were going to travel here anyway, so do they really care?
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
Do try it.
You Do It delivers high-quality New Zealand-made flat-pack DIY kitchen cabinetry. With flexible widths at your fingertips, it makes designing easy. All at an affordable price because you order online and cut out the middleman. You can even upgrade your dream kitchen with You Do It stylish and clever options, like choosing wall cabinets with overhanging doors, or select from a range of pull-out storage solutions. Add premium soft-close drawers and ask to stretch the height, width or depth of your cabinets. Upgrade your kitchen today and head to nzherald.co.nz.
You're watching Herald Now. Great to have your company. 16 away from 9 o'clock, and it is time to talk property thanks to our partners at GJ Gardner. Despite Auckland's grim CV update from the other day, a new report released by property analytics company Cotality says house values are on the rise across a growing number of suburbs. Ray White's CEO Daniel Coulson is with us this morning. Daniel, good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Where are we talking? Because, I mean, the CV thing, let's just forget about that because it doesn't mean anything, right?
Correct. Completely agree.
Okay.
Disregard.
All right, well, let's move on to something more interesting then. What is this report telling us?
Well, I think the report's telling us what we've probably known for some time is that when market changes occur, it affects different types of property quite differently. We saw obviously when we came off the peak of the market that residential houses were probably the last in to the downturn. Apartments were probably the first in to the downturn. No surprise when we come out the other side that we see a similar thing occurring. And townhouses almost fit in that patch in the middle, where you've got a more concentrated buyer pool for residential standalone homes. You've got more people that are looking for those sorts of properties. So naturally, they're going to be the first out when things start to recover. Townhouses are going to follow, and apartments probably after that.
Because the houses are more affordable, I suppose there'd be more people who could potentially get them on the way up and on the way out.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say that not everybody wants a standalone home on a big section. Not everybody wants a townhouse, but normally speaking, you would have a wider buyer pool, if you like, for people that are looking for a residential home on a big section. When prices start to increase, when affordability starts to decrease, people have to start to compromise, right? So if you can't buy the big house on the big section, you've got to go a smaller house on a smaller section. If you can't get that, then you go to the apartment. And so naturally you see the buyer pool flow to those other property types later on as property prices start recovering.
Are we seeing, because such a large proportion, particularly in central Auckland's population, is migrants who aren't necessarily used to or keen to have, you know, big sections with grass out the back and trees and stuff like that to maintain. Have you noticed any change with the demographics in Auckland to the desirability of apartments and townhouses and the like?
Absolutely, and I think you just look at some of the central suburbs now, whether it's St Mary's Bay, Ponsonby, Freeman's Bay, Parnell, in these central areas where you're actually seeing very high value apartments now. That's somewhat of a new phenomenon for Auckland and New Zealand. People now getting out of the big homes and moving into those apartments. But when you look at those that are moving to New Zealand as well, that might have a different experience where they've come from, they're looking for a similar type of property from what they've been in. Yes, but then you get into the question of migration, right? And we all know that that's not exactly booming at the moment either.
Yeah, true. Right, let's have a look. Did you bring a house for us to look at today?
I think somebody sent one. Yeah,
I hope we've got one.
There might be one to have a look at.
Do we have one? Oh, 231 Garnet Road, I'm being told. Let's have a look. Have you got the rundown for us? What are we looking at here?
This is a pretty special property actually, right down on the waterfront in Westmere. Fabulous home. I mean, you can see the quality of it. Beautifully presented, right there in the heart of Westmere. This is proudly marketed by our team from the Bray White Point Chev office, and pretty special sort of property.
Stunning house, and you'd be just down the road from the Mowbrays at that address.
Possibly not far.
Close by?
Possibly not far, but my preference is the fact that you're actually quite close to BB's Bakery. Pretty good pie there on a Saturday.
You actually have to, I was there on last Saturday, you have to line up to get in.
Yes.
But the pies are worth it.
They're pretty good.
Yeah. Hey, thanks very much for coming in. Great to have you here.
Pleasure, thanks for having me.
See you again soon. That's Daniel Colson with us, Ray White, Chief Executive. And we talk property every Thursday thanks to our partners GJ Gardner. It is now 12 minutes away from 9 o'clock. And business with our partners 2 Degrees. NZ King Salmon says its customers don't mind the Trump tariffs, but its fish are not really liking this warmer weather in the water, that is. Earlier, Garth Bray from Business Desk was here. He's been following the story.
Was NZ King Salmon at the annual shareholders meeting. The chair was telling them, look, we're not seeing any change in demand through the year since that sort of 10% tariff kicked in. I guess if you can afford to buy lovely New Zealand salmon, maybe you don't mind a little bit extra. But they are a wee bit worried about marine heat waves. For the last 3 years, they've been trying to manage the pressure that's put on their fishing stocks. They had to, I think, reduce their forecast for next year for profit guidance for earnings because they were going to have to cut back from harvesting something with a 6 in front, 6,000 odd tonnes to somewhere more like about a 5,000. But they've got a solution, and that is this offshore fish farm that they've got approval for and raised $150, $200 million worth to build, sort of about 7 k's off into the Cook Strait, very cold water, and so that should possibly help. They think if it works, there's like $350 million worth of export earnings to be picked up that would lift their amounts massively.
I spoke to the chief executive about this a couple of months ago, and he said basically they think eventually they might just move everything further out.
Well, leave the sounds for the people that want to enjoy it and the pleasure boats and natural beauty and that.
And if the water's cooler and that's what you need, then it makes sense, doesn't it? Right, Tracksuit. Now this is a local sort of startup that does. Well, what exactly?
This is always the question. Brand tracking. Answering the hardest thing, I think you were asking before for farmers to phone in and people in rural, what do you think of farmers? Well, businesses struggle with what do people think of our brand? And normally the answer is go and spend $100,000, $200,000 at some place, Cantar, wherever, get your market research done. Takes ages. It's really for the rich, for the bigger companies. These guys have been up and running for 3 or 4 years, and they offer it at about 1/10 of the cost, a lot quicker, AI enabled, and it's going really well. They've got about 1,000 customers. They've got people like Disney, Zuru. They've got your Goodman Fielders. They're expanding left, right, and centre. I think Germany and Canada, as well as France, the UK, US, and they've raised $42 million in a Series B raise, which is probably one of the largest ones at that level. They're not quite profitable yet, but they are on the cusp. I mean, they say they want to build a business from New Zealand that's a multi-billion-dollar business.
That's cool.
I mean, the race is on between them and King Salmon, I'd say.
Yes, yeah, but they've got big. I mean, you said they were targeting smaller businesses, but those are big players that you're mentioning. Some of their customers.
Well, I guess it's attractive, right? If you can present not just a bunch of charts and graph, but here's a story. And I think like one of their backers essentially was saying, look, they give clear, continuous, and cost-effective idea about how your brand's performing, and that's a big deal. So Blackbird are a venture capital funder of theirs. They're Australian-based. They were into Canva. I mean, Canva's just made a whole bunch of millionaires in Sydney when they finally sort of got there and went public. So this is this is one of those great little success stories, and
Yeah.
it's not dependent on the weather so much. It's dependent on coming up with a smart answer.
Yeah, how cool. And also AI makes everything presumably a lot cheaper to operate, which is what makes
Seemingly. If you can crack it, yeah.
You're watching Herald Now. That was Garth Bray, thanks to our partners at 2 Degrees from Business Desk. It's just gone 8 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Quick email from you. This is sent in from Donna, who says, I'm sure the point has already been made or noted, because we were in Los Angeles earlier with the protests. I'm sure the point has already been made or noted, says Donna. But President Trump's current comments about concern for police and other law enforcement officers and rejecting mob violence are a far and distant cry from his reaction to what happened on Capitol Hill during the attacks there on law, order and US democracy. That's a fair point, Donna. It may or may not have been made before, but that doesn't mean that you can't make it again. It's just gone 8 minutes away from 9 o'clock now. Let's get to the front page podcast host, Chelsea Daniels, or as it's written here, Chelseus Daniels. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good to see you. You got this morning talking about Israel, and we've put the sanctions on, and I guess the couple of things is whether we should be worried about the US reaction to what we've done, and whether Israel will be worried about what we've done.
Yeah, so I spoke to our friend, University of Waikato Professor Al Gillespie this morning about the whole blockade situation and the travel bans on those two extremist ministers. And I asked him, what are the chances of them, like they were actually packing their skis on the way to Queenstown? Answer is very little to zero, but it's all about perception, isn't it? So we've made a pretty big play here, it's a small stand, but it's a show to the world that we are firmly in the Europeans' camp. And the US coming out and saying that they're not happy with us doing that as well goes to show that we are firmly going down the European route, which is a good thing. But we do need to stay in step with the Europeans now. We can't lag behind, we can't go ahead of them. So whatever they do, I mean, we'll have to. It's early.
We'll follow suit.
We'll follow. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's a fine line, though, isn't it? Well, it's actually not when it comes to Israel. Certainly not when it came to Russia.
Well, that's the thing, hey. And the blockade. I mean, Al told me that it's barbarism that belongs in the Middle Ages, and that's exactly where the idea and point of blockades became widely used in warfare. So they used to blockade contraband, like weapons, and then after World War I, World War II, everyone was like, right, what is contraband? We should probably let food in. So there was kind of a general consensus about that. But because Israel holds the lever, how does the rest of the world say, look, no, you're actually doing something illegal here, get the food in? And some harrowing stories from the front line, Ryan, as well. I read this quote on CNN. This woman was trying to get food for her family at one of the aid distribution sites. And she said, we're so hungry that we're willing to risk getting shot for just a kilo of flour.
Yeah, it's a grim situation there. Chelsea, we look forward to your chat with Al Gillespie on the podcast today. Thanks for coming in. Chelsea Daniels with us from the Front Page podcast, now 5 away from 9. Next, our reporter Katie Oliver with the stories you need to keep an eye on at nzherald.co.nz today.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
If we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then. Mm-hmm.
Hip-hop and R&B. Flavour.
After 20 seasons on the footy field, it's fair to say I know a thing or two about resilience. Digging deep when the going gets tough. Just like Kaiwaka wet weather gear. Kaiwaka's been in the game for 200 seasons. 50 years of facing up to the elements, getting the job done, and coming back for more. And that's guaranteed for a lifetime. Kaiwaka, designed to perform, made to outlast.
When building for investment, it's important to find a team that you can trust.
We decided to build the GGs because they're good quality that they always provide us.
They help us throughout the whole process of getting the resource consent to the building consent, and their contracts are very easy to understand. We have built 4 houses with GJ Gardeners, and it's just easier every time we work with them.
I'll definitely recommend GJs to all of my friends and family.
If you're thinking of building, choose the builder you'll want to build with time and time again.
You're watching Herald Now. Tomorrow on the show, we've got the Air New Zealand Chief Executive Greg Foran, and Sonny Bill Williams will be on the show too, talking about his fight. So lots happening on your Friday morning here at Herald Now. We look forward to seeing you then. Right now, here's the Tourism New Zealand video. And remember, I was criticising them for how much it cost to make. This is the 30-second version of a 90-second version. Have a look first. So it's beautiful, like it's a very well shot, it's a stunning campaign, but to be honest with you, looks very much like the pictures from the last campaign. However, according to Tourism New Zealand, the new campaign launches today across global social media channels and paid media in the United States will roll out across New Zealand's key visitor source markets using digital, social, trade and industry activity. According to them, the full development of the campaign cost $5.5 million and has been worked on for the past 6 months. You cannot be serious. That cannot have cost $5.5 million. Apparently it did. It's 1 away from 9 now. Time to check in with our reporter Katie Oliver from Herald Now. Katie, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Right, so we're looking ahead at stories for today. Retail NZ's announced a rough timeline for facial recognition technology.
Yeah, so facial recognition technology, which we've spoken about previously on the show, it's essentially where retailers utilise facial recognition technology in their cameras. Now, this is really helpful for theft recognition, but that's set to roll out in the main retail stores in the next month for some, and then in the next 3 to 6 months for others. So we're looking at places like the Warehouse, Briscoe's, Rebel Sport, Mitre 10 and Farmers. So yeah, that's on the way. So robbers, look out.
Yeah. You've been warned, Katie. Nice. Now the Aratiri. So this is the ferry across the Cook Strait, literally limping towards the finish line because it's going to be retired in August. But this morning, well, overnight, lots of trouble.
Yeah, so the passengers on board the Aratiri were stuck for hours. They were meant to arrive, so they left Picton at 8:50 p.m. and the issue wasn't fixed until around 1 a.m. So they were just kind of floating out in the oblivion, waiting for it to be fixed. And then they had an expected arrival time of about 5 a.m. This morning. So they were stuck out there. Now, this is that same ferry that ran aground last year, but it's a month out from retiring. So, I mean, you can't really blame it. It's kind of limping along at this point, isn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, it really is. Just the finish line. And finally this morning, Luxon, is he still at field days? He was there yesterday, wasn't he?
Yeah, so according to notes that we just had, is that he's set to speak in an hour, although if he was there yesterday, maybe you have more things to say on Will this morning. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he goes where he's liked, and he's very well liked at field days at the moment, the national government. Thank you very much, Katie.
Thanks,
Good
Ryan.
to see you. All right, it is 9 o'clock, and that was Katie Oliver from Herald Now. Here's Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
New Zealand's export revenue from food and fibres is forecast to surpass $60 billion for the first time. Agriculture and Forestry Minister Todd McClay says strong global demand and healthy prices across key markets are positioning us for record growth. The latest Situation and Outlook for Primary Industries report projects export earnings of $59.9 billion with the year ending later this month. That's $3 billion higher than expected in December. And McClay says with this momentum, it's on track to reach $65.7 billion by 2029. Heavy hitters include dairy exports lifting 16% to a record $27 billion and horticulture rising 19% to $8.5 billion. Meanwhile, Beef and Lamb New Zealand is concerned whether the settings around farm to forest conversions go far enough. Todd McClay has introduced legislation to stop large-scale conversions. Research shows nearly 39,000 hectares of whole sheep and beef farms have been sold since the last report in September. Beef and Lamb New Zealand chair Kate Ackland says they're not anti-forestry, they just support trees in steep, less productive country. A New York jury has found Harvey Weinstein guilty on a sex crimes charge in a retrial. It comes after an appeals court last year overturned the former movie mogul's 2020 conviction. Weinstein, once one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, was accused by prosecutors of raping an aspiring actress and assaulting 2 other women. The 73-year-old pleaded not guilty and has denied assaulting anyone or having non-consensual sex. The jury has found Weinstein guilty on 1 of the 3 counts he faced, not guilty on a second count, and did not reach a verdict on the 3rd count. Facial recognition technology could soon be rolled out by some of the country's largest retailers. Woolworths, The Warehouse, Briscoes, Rebel Sport, Bunnings, Mitre 10, Farmers, Michael Hill, Spark and 1NZ are all supporting the use of the tech. It follows a successful trial by Foodstuffs in some New World and Pack and Save stores. Retail NZ Chief Executive Carolyn Young says retailers are working on ways to include the tech as part of their existing security measures.
Really focusing on how do we keep our staff safe, because we've seen this increasing level of violent and aggressive behaviour towards staff.
Co-founder of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, has died aged 82. Wilson co-founded the boy band in 1961 with his brothers Dennis and Carl, their cousin Mike Love and friend Al Jardine. He was the last surviving brother and visionary leader and songwriter of hits like Surfin' USA and Good Vibrations.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
South Africa are 43 for 4 at stumps, responding to Australia's 212 after the opening day of cricket's World Test Championship final at Lords. Lulu Sun and American doubles tennis partner Anne Lee have lost their first match at the WTA's latest grass court event in the Netherlands in straight sets. Female tennis players wanting to freeze eggs or embryos to start a family at a later date will now have their ranking protected by the WTA Tour. Taranaki have successfully defended the Ranfurly Shield for the first time in 2025 with a 78-7 win over King Country in New Plymouth.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. The instability over central New Zealand remains today, with a low lying just off the west coast of the South Island and a nor'west flow over the north. So the risk remains for thunderstorms today for some, but at this stage just 1 heavy rain watch is in place for North Otago through till 5 o'clock this afternoon, with a moderate chance of upgrading to an orange warning. So occasional rain across the day for Dunedin, with the chance of showers for Southland. Showers will clear for you Queenstown this morning. Mostly cloudy with showers for the upper half of the south. Christchurch and Ashburton, you can expect more rain than those on the west coast, with strong sou'easterlies for South Canterbury. Taranaki, you do have conditions right for thunderstorms again today, this morning, then again tonight, with strong nor'westerlies. Any showers here will be this morning, but becoming few and far between this afternoon. Winds will be from the north or nor'west, could be strong this afternoon for those around Gisborne. And more showers today for the upper north, with possible heavy falls and thunderstorms with hail for Auckland, west of the city this morning, but easing for a time this afternoon and early tonight.
All right, it has just gone 6 after 9. Tomorrow is Friday. That means our political panel will have Willie Jackson, of course, from Labor. Erica Stanford is away on other business, so we're trying to sort out National's trying to sort out who they're going to put in her place. We asked for Judith Collins because she's funny, but they said no. I think they don't want Judith out barking too loudly at passing cars. Anyway, if you've got any ideas, who would you prefer? Because at the moment, who is it? Paul Goldsmith's a potential. Chris Bishop might be in there. We sort of want someone who's in Auckland. maybe Mark Mitchell, Ryan at nzherald.co.nz. Also, if you've got any questions for Greg Foran, the Chief Executive at Air New Zealand, he's on the program tomorrow. Same goes for Sonny Bill Williams, ahead of his big fight. He's on the show tomorrow as well, so it is a packed Friday. Don't forget, you can keep up today with today's news at nzherald.co.nz. A quick thank you to our partners this morning, Forsyth Bar, You Do It, Barker's, 2 Degrees, GJ Gardner and Noel Leeming. From the team here at Herald Now, I'm Ryan Bridge. See you tomorrow morning.